This conference will now be recorded.
At 5:01, I call the special City Council meeting and public hearing of the governing body of the City of Blanco to order. Roll call.
Mayor Lumpy?
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Salcedo? Here. Councilmember McClellan?
Here.
Councilmember Smith?
Present.
Councilmember Barrett? Present. Councilmember Devine?
Great. I don't see the. Please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I have a few announcements. The 4-H Club is collecting coats until December 10th. There's multiple drop-off locations around town, and they will be distributing the coats at the market days on Saturday. Which brings me to, there is going to be the Christmas Blanco Market Days on this Saturday. And the holiday parade is also going to take place this Saturday. Right now we're at 20 entries, so we're really excited. There is currently no burn ban, but burn carefully. And as of today, there are 29 active cases of COVID, and there is a very high risk level. So be careful. Do we have any public comments? Christine Anderson?
Read it. I have two to read, but she's not one of them. Oh, she's one of them.
Yeah, I don't see Christine.
I'll read the other two.
Yes.
Oh, it was already on? This one's from Wayne Gosnell. Press it again. Oh, there you go. Dear Council, P&Z, and Blanco Historic Preservation Commission, this is to express my strong support for the creation of a Highway 281 overlay plan to be done in conjunction with the ongoing zoning considerations being considered by Council. Absent of such a plan, Blanco would inevitably morph into something resembling the 281 strip in Marble Falls. Our city will lose its unique character and no longer have the small town charm of which we are so proud. The overlay plan will require funds, but it is my firm belief that will be money well spent, as it will secure our future by sheltering us from commercial growth that is not in step with the character and spirit of our community. Thank you. Wayne Gosnell, resident, City of Blanco. And the second one is from Brenda Matheny. Dear council members and general public, I would like to request that the City Council consider a proposal to add an amendment to the invocation ordinance, which would provide for the option of a moment of silence in place of a spoken invocation. A moment of silence would respect the belief system of all who attend these meetings. As it stands, the current invocation privileges those of the Christian faith, and that seems inherently unconditional to me. Respectfully, Brenda Matheny. Thank you.
Mr. Dornock?
Thank you. Sorry, I was running a little late. Nick Dornack, the Meta Center for Water and the Environment and facilitator for the Blanco Water Reclamation Task Force. Good evening, everyone. First of all, I look forward to continuing our work with the city over the coming year under the recently extended MOU between Blanco and Texas State University. Since we set to work back in September of 2020, our task force members have tirelessly committed themselves to better understand the city's resources and goals for wastewater management, reuse, and environmental protection. We have funded 2 engineering studies and met with state regulators to inform our recommendations to council, including expanded storage, expanded irrigation, and preferred permitting strategies. We realize the city has limited resources, but shares a strong desire with downstream landowners to protect the Blanco River for future generations. Our task force is currently recommending a hybrid or phased Texas land application permit for Blanco to address short to medium range water quality goals, TCEQ permitting requirements, and avoid significant legal fees associated with the contested case hearing. We realize that this would require about 9 million gallons of expanded storage at a cost of approximately $1.2 million to accommodate anticipated wastewater treatment capacity demands. It also requires that the city do some work to find more irrigation land over the next few years. These are not easy asks, but we have been very encouraged by the work already undertaken by the city to ensure improved management of wastewater operations and to secure additional irrigation lands. These are huge steps taken with very thoughtful consideration and should be applauded by all of Blanco's citizens. And some more good news for this evening. As you may know, Texas will be receiving over $500 million in fiscal year 2022 for water infrastructure projects, including water quality protection. The task force, the city, and our partners at the Hill Country Alliance worked together earlier this year to put Blanco in a prime position to take advantage of these funds, a significant portion of which are set to be available through grants and principal forgiveness loans. We're closely monitoring the details for funding allocations and distribution. And will these funds get us across the finish line? That remains to be seen. But I believe the task force has shown its resolve and commitment to date and will continue to do so as more details emerge. I would like to thank the mayor, council, city staff, tremendous work by city staff, Protect Our Blanco, and our NGO partners, Hill Country Alliance and National Wildlife Federation, for their work in this important task. We'll continue to update the city and refine our recommendations as more details on funding and resources emerge. Thank you, and just wish you a very wonderful holiday season. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Okay, one of your line items was that additional land would be required in addition to the bonds. Do you know how many acres?
Right now, the water balance shows for 225,000 gallons of daily discharge, which is where you would be in a few years. Yeah. It would require 100 acres total.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We are going to move on to the proclamation, January 23rd, 29th through the 29th, 2022 as School Choice Week in Blanco. Whereas all children in the city of Blanco should have access to the highest quality education possible, and whereas the city of Blanco recognizes the significant role that an effective education plays in preparing all students of the city of Blanco to be successful adults, and whereas quality education is critically important to the economic vitality of the city of Blanco, and whereas the city of Blanco is home to a multitude of high quality public and non-public schools from which parents can choose for their children, in addition to families who educate their children in home. And whereas educational variety not only helps to diversify our economy, but also enhances the vibrancy of our community. And whereas the city of Blanco has many high quality teaching professionals in all types of school settings who are committed to educating our children, and whereas School Choice Week is celebrated across the country by millions of students, parents, educators, schools, and organizations to raise awareness for the need for effective educational options. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Rachel Lumpy, do hereby recognize January 23rd through January 29th, 2022 as the City of Blanco School Choice Week. And I call this observance to the attention of all of our citizens. Next, we have a presentation by the CRC.
Hello, my name is Dawn Capra. I'm Site Director for the Community Resource Centers of Texas, and Alice Sierra is with me. She's the site coordinator for the Blanco County CRC, and we are here to give you a little bit of information about the Blanco County CRC. First and foremost, we are located in Johnson City, but we are for the entire county of Blanco. We're
You might mention what CRC stands for.
Community Resource Center. So, sorry. We are open for the entire county, not just the city of Johnson City. And that's one thing we wanted to stress tonight is that we're here for the citizens of the city of Blanco as well. And we are working hard to get the information out. We opened our doors January of 2020 and then promptly closed them in March of 2020, just like everybody else did. But since then, mid 2020, we opened back up partially, and some of our agencies are coming back. So what I mean by that is we have a twofold mission. First and foremost, we provide referral resources for people in need, and we also do financial assistance on a limited basis. And then we provide free office space for nonprofits and state and local government agencies. So we have DSHS who uses our facility. We have a medical suite and they provide immunizations there. They do tuberculosis testing and a few other things. WIC will also use that space. We have the Johnson City Christian Food Pantry there, and we also provide a space for the 33rd and 424th Judicial District Adult Probation offices. We have several new agencies that are going to be joining us in January, one being the community paramedic that Blanco County EMS has just hired. The veteran service officer for Blanco County will be housed out of there. We also have some counseling services, MHDD, if you know them, they're the Hill Country MHDD, Mental Health Developmental Disabilities, the old MHMR. They are housed out of our offices, Ecumenical Center, Workforce Solutions. I will be passing out information that tells you all of our participating agencies. I'll go ahead and pass these out. You do have some of this information in your packets, but these are the nice, pretty colorful ones.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So in your packet, we put almost all the information we could think of to help y'all understand what we do and then to spread the word if you know of somebody who needs help. Not only do we provide space for agencies and nonprofits, we also have a great conference room and meeting room space. The conference room, it has a large conference table in it, and we also have equipment like you do in here, so people could do either Zoom meetings there, or they could have PowerPoint presentations or whatever they need to do. And then our meeting room is connected to a kitchen. Just yesterday, we had a fine arts group there making baklava for JCIC? Yes. Okay. So the kitchen gets used very often, and we have crafts people that use it. We have a church that uses it. So the meeting room is very versatile, and it would seat without the tables almost 50 people, but with the tables like 35 to 40 people. And it's open 7 days a week from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. We also, you will see these rack cards. We have them in English and Spanish. These tell you what our basic services are, as well as rack cards promoting our transportation voucher program. This is something that was developed at the Blanco County CRC, and we expanded it to the Williamson County CRC, which is located in Liberty Hill. What the transportation voucher program does is provide, it's a volunteer service, and we provide people with a checkbook. It looks like a little checkbook with a check register. And if they get a volunteer to drive them, we will pay the volunteer the mileage rate for the business mileage rate, 56 cents per mile. And we hope to inspire family members to drive their, a daughter to drive her mom somewhere to the doctor's office or to the grocery store. Because a lot of the calls we get, they say, well, my daughter would take me, but she doesn't have money for gas. So if we're hoping to encourage more people to be neighborly to do that, but also we're taking volunteers who would be available to drive, and we can give them that list of volunteers, and then they can call those people and set up a time to go. So the RAC card will explain that to you, and if you want more information, I would be happy to talk to you about it. We are looking for volunteers, and you can see we have our little volunteer sheet. The other program that we have that requires volunteers is the store-to-door delivery. It's a grocery delivery service, and we do this in conjunction with the Lowe's in Johnson City and the Lowe's in Blanco. We started this during lockdown for people who were at risk and didn't want to leave their homes. It was a touchless service, basically from the store to the client's door. It's a very simple procedure. The person just calls Lowe's in the morning. They give them their order. Lowe's packs the order, calls us, tells us they have an order, who it's for. Then we contact a volunteer. The volunteer goes to the store to pick up the order, gets the receipt, then calls the client, says, I'm on my way. This is how much it is. When they get there, they set the groceries at the door, and then they exchange a receipt for the check, and then take a copy of the receipt and the check back to the grocery store. It's as simple as that. And we are looking for more volunteers to do that as well for us. You will also see the participating agencies, which I mentioned a little earlier. These are almost all of these agencies will office out of the CRC at some point in time during the month. We don't have a lot of agencies that are full-time. Most of them will be 2 times a month, 1 time a week, because they don't have enough staff. So, and that's one of the services we provide. They don't have to pay rent for an office. And back in 2005, the state of Texas pulled all of its agencies from the rural communities because they couldn't afford to pay rent in, say, Marble Falls or Johnson City or, New Braunfels or wherever they were. So it just went to the 1-800 numbers, and people were just having to talk to them on the phone or go to Austin or San Marcos as the nearest place. So what we have done is to provide them that space, and they could come out for free so that our people don't have to drive into Austin. They have to set appointments because, again, they're not full time, but at least it's easier for them to get to the appointment. So if you have any questions about any of these agencies, what their services are, what their times are, you can ask me. And then on the back there, these are some of the things that we provide. We do have through the ADRC, which is an area agency on aging, we do a summer fan drive every year where we give out free fans. And there's not too many things that you have to qualify for in order to get that, but mainly households with children or elderly folks who might not have air conditioning and who are susceptible to heat illnesses. And we probably gave out over 400 fans across all 4 CRCs. We also have one in Llano and one in Marble Falls. That's our headquarters over the course of 3 months this past summer. We also provide free application assistance. When the Texas Rent Relief Program was ongoing, we helped with that, but we also help with benefits, SNAP benefits, CHIP, that kind of thing. Let's see, what else is there? This sheet right here will tell you everything that I just gave you, a very long, lengthy speech that's probably boring you all to death, but this will tell you more about what we do. And if you have any questions, it has my contact information on it. And it has Lucy Murphy, she's our executive director, and has her information on it. And I do have business cards if somebody wants a business card. Otherwise, you can just contact me at this number. Or you can contact Alice. Her number is on the conference and meeting room card. That's the Johnson City number. So again, we are here for all the citizens in Blanco. We have the food pantry in Johnson City, but we also work with Good Samaritan a lot. Key Hudson works with us, and she will refer people to us when they need help. So if you have any questions, or if you know somebody who needs us and you want us to reach out to them, we can do that, or just give them our number and we can help them with whatever they need.
Thank you.
Did you want one of these?
Sure.
And I keep asking you.
That's okay, I'll take it. Thank you so much.
We are going to move on to staff presentations. And first we have City Hall, Ms. Kinsler.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Thank you. So, good evening. We go to the next page. Just a few noteworthy updates that I
Ms.
wanted
Kinsler,
for this report.
Can you?
Go.
Thank you.
Just the typing so small I can't see it from over there. So just a few noteworthy updates. We just updated you last week, Simple City should have our forms ready for distribution and development services. If you remember, I showed you the graphs, the bar graphs that they did for any type of item that you might, whether it's a zoning change or a simple plat change, whatever it might be. We have it itemized, and now you just follow the graph down so you know as a citizen and for the staff exactly what you need to do for different services in the Development Services Department. So my goal was by the end of December to get the graphs married to the UDC and married to forms that people would take with them so that we knew that every element of your ordinances and your UDC was covered in those forms. We should get those any day now. So that's one goal that's going to be accomplished for sure that we've talked about. Interviews were conducted last week by a great group of people for the operation of the water and wastewater treatment plant. Councilmember Barron was there. Councilmember Smith was there. Mr. Rican, who's the chair of the Capital Advisory Committee, was there. Mr. Armstrong, O.J. Armstrong was there, who's also a member of the Capital Advisory Committee. Those interviews were conducted on December the 1st. So the two companies that we interviewed were Jacobs Engineering and Inframark. The group selected was Inframark, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the agenda. And the group is suggesting to you all that you allow me to begin negotiations with Inframark. Next slide, please. AdComp is finalizing the software in the utilities department so that kiosk up there, I forgot it has a name, I forgot what it is, in the front of City Hall can be utilized. The go live date is still January of 2022. Because the finance department's in the middle of those IRS audits, there's not going to be a financial status report for November, but we'll catch you up again in January. And next slide. So I just wanted to go over the particular RFPs and RFQs that have been out there because we have a lot in October and November that we've done. So the RFP for IT was due November the 19th. Lori has put together a committee that will meet tomorrow. So December 8th is not right. To recommend a vendor to the city administrator. If that vendor is under $50,000, I will probably just go ahead and proceed with the contract, and we'll just put it on the next agenda since you all gave us the authority to do the RFP, and if it's under $50,000, you can have the city manager carry it forward, and that will save a step for everybody. The RFQ for the wastewater treatment plants on your agenda tonight. The 281 corridor, that one was due November the 15th, and only one company submitted a proposal. I think it was about $135,000, which in my opinion was too much for the corridor. So I had another company approach me. They submitted an original budget of 49. We now have them down to 41,990 something. So you went from 135 to 41,9 something. And so I would like to go ahead. This is on the agenda. I'd like to go ahead and move forward with that. The city attorney RFQ was done. 3 different either firms or individuals were interviewed. It's on your agenda tonight. The committee chose Tim Tuggy, who is right behind me, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. The auditor RFQ went out and it was due December the 3rd. So it was on the TML website and it was in the newspaper. Nobody submitted. So I have 2 ideas on that. One is, well, 3 ideas. One is the fact that we had to say in there, we use QuickBooks and get ready. So I'm sure that was uncomfortable for auditors. I don't even know how to use QuickBooks. It's, you know, it's interesting. So that was probably part of it. But the other thing I found out is that it was not put in the Government Finance Officers Association. Like for your city manager, I stuck it in all of the regions and in the TML and TCMA. So this one was not as widely dispersed. So we're going to have to do it again. So I wanted to have that done for you before I left, but that's not going to happen. We will have it go out again before I leave though. And then finally, the city administrator, you all were here. You were here for the interviews. I have some correspondence to share with you in executive session tonight, and we'll determine whether or not you want to make a motion after executive session. And I believe that that concludes the city administrator's report for the last week. Do I have any questions? Thank you much.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the police department. Chief Rubin.
Good evening. Y'all have our monthly report in your packets. If anybody has any questions about those numbers. In addition to that, we're also getting ready for the parade on Saturday. Uploaded the parade route on Facebook. The mayor got it on the city's Facebook today, so people can have some advance notice on what road closures are going to be. I'm sure everyone won't see it, but hopefully some people do. The parade's coming up. We're also doing our toy drive. That's also on, I believe, both Facebooks, and there's various locations around town if people want to drop off new unwrapped toys that we're collecting.
When's the deadline for that, the drop-off deadline for before you?
I believe it was the 17th, I think, because we have to, yeah, get them to the crisis center. That's really it. There's no questions about our report. Oh, one other thing I'd like to add to, so on AdComp, we are also, the police department, we hope to go live the middle of this month with the electronic ticket solutions. Let's see. So that's the goal date is the middle of this month to be live with the electronic tickets. So that should be very helpful if we get it done. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the consent agenda. Item 1, approval of interlocal agreement between the City of Blanco and the Blanco Emergency Service District Number 2. Is there a motion?
I move we enter into the interlocal cooperation agreement between the City of Blanco and the Blanco County ESD District 2.
Councilmember Barron has moved to approve the interlocal agreement between the City of Blanco and Blanco ESD number 2. Is there a second? Councilmember Smith has seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? The motion carries unanimously. We are going to move to old business because we are not going to start the public hearing until 6 p.m. because that's what we posted. So we will go back to the public hearing at 6 p.m. So old business, item 1, discussion, consideration, and possible action on amendment to ordinance 2021-0012 on opening invocations before meetings of the City Council of Blanco, Texas. Okay, and that one has been withdrawn for now, and we will put it back on the agenda at a later date. Item 2, discussion, consideration, and possible action on Main Street architect proposal. Ms. Kinsler.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Let me wait for the PowerPoint to get put up there.
It should be OB2.
Next slide, please. Having trouble driving? Okay, I don't have a packet. If somebody will give me the presentation, I'll just wing it. Thank you, Chief. So this is an item under old business. Main Street Architects answered an RFQ that was issued by Streetscape and presented their proposal to Streetscape in June. Streetscape awarded the RFQ to Main Street Architects in July. And in August, I met with the owner of Main Street Architects in an effort to understand how the Streetscape proposal should come before an update to the city's master plan. So next slide. So Sue Ann Pemberton and I agreed at the time that the project needed to be redesigned and that projects should run parallel and that the fee would be based over the duration of the project. Even with the rewrite that we did, I still don't believe it's in the best interest of the taxpayer to do the entire plan. I also discussed the original RFQ and possible revisions with Streetscape on November the 8th with Mayor Lumpy. The item was brought before the City Council in November and the council opted to not fund it. However, Councilmember Smith asked that this be brought back up at today's City Council meeting. So your options are, number one, adopt the Main Street Architect Inc. plan as it is and allocate $80,000 towards the complete plan. You can adopt a very revised version of the plan, which in that presentation they have with you, it's the first bullet in phase 1, and I think it's the second bullet in phase 2, but that cost $15,000, and Main Street Architects Inc. supports this expenditure. You don't adopt any of the plan and you revisit this year, or you come up with your own revision of the plan. Next page. The recommendation, the fiscal impact would be $15,000, and I think Streetscape has most of the amount in their budget, minus maybe $2,000. However, I will once again give you the same recommendation that I gave you last time. Mayor Lumpy and I spoke with Ms. Pemberton last week, and her idea on the $15,000, and please let me know if I'm quoting wrong, Mayor Lumpy, is to strategically place benches around the square. So it is my opinion that the $15,000 could be better served by actually buying benches, possibly buying kiosks or whatever else is currently in the plan, rather than recreating a new plan and not having any money to fund it. So that is my professional opinion, but you are the policymakers, and that's why we're here this evening.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I want to say that I appreciate council opening this again so we can consider it. And I understand this council's position on this, but I want to reiterate the allocation. We set this aside as allocation in our budget. We've discussed it then, and that may be approved, but we did set the funds aside. The majority of the funds are being funded by private donations, and that our expenditure is $7,000, not $15,000. Is that correct?
So Mayor, Councilmember Smith, the body gave $7,000 to Streetscape this year when it was allocating its nonprofit funds.
So that funding has already been funded to Streetscape, is that correct?
Yes, for Streetscape can spend it however they want. I don't believe that there was anything in the contract that specifically stated how they had to spend it.
Would not preclude them from entering into an agreement with Main Street.
Absolutely not.
Okay, then that's.
The share of that primarily coming out of hot funds, is that right?
I can't answer.
Yes,
Okay.
it is. It 100% out of hot funds.
Okay, so Main Street now is in a position to award this contract if they wanted to, because we have funded that.
You have given them $7,000 and they can use that $7,000. I believe, I don't have the contract with me, but I do not remember you all, I don't remember you necessarily restricting it to anything.
Now, if I could, the 7,000 that we set aside for Streetscape from hot funds was to help them do what they wanted to do. They believe they have an additional 6,000 committed to them from Keep Blanco Beautiful. That Keep Blanco Beautiful will take funds that they have raised and have had donated and add it to the 7. So they're pretty darn close. They're within 1,000 or 2 of hitting the amount of money that would be the minimum to do the thing. I will say I attended the Streetscape Committee meeting and sat through it and listened to the discussion and answered a fair number of questions on both sides. There was a good bit of discussion. There were some business people who said, for Pete's sake, let's use the money and do something that we could already do. Let's buy some benches, let's put up some signs, let's do some things that we might be able to research from other places. There were other folks on the Streetscape Committee that felt that if they could get a design that would be a detailed enough rendering of what the square would look like, that would assist them with future fundraising and stepwise implementation of that plan going forward. So I asked them to come up with the consensus and tell me what they wanted for tonight, for like, how do you want me to vote? So the chairperson of that committee said after discussion, the majority wanted to have the design done. They felt they didn't have a tool. I suggested they call Ms. Pemberton and make sure that what they think they're going to get is what they're going to get. Are you really going to get a good design, a real schematic, something that you can put into place just to make sure you're spending your money wisely? So I'm assuming they had those discussions, because my call prior to the meeting from the Streetscape chairperson was, we would like to go ahead and proceed with the plan because we think that will help us raise money and go forward. So I respect that.
Okay. Well, at this point, we've already funded the $7,000.
You have
Yes.
funded the $7,000 and
So- And
they can
independent
contract
of
with
the city, they have the authority to engage Main Street architects
absolutely.
to do this work.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Well, then my request for this is finished.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Unless there's a motion.
Is there any motion?
I move that we adopt this revised version of the plan, which would cost Streetscape $15,000. Main Street architects, let's see, I guess I need to look at the agenda items.
Yeah, I think the motion would be that we would release the $7,000 to the Streetscape Committee for their use to enter into this contract.
We already have.
That's already
Yeah,
done.
That's done.
Mhm.
Okay.
I mean, honestly, you don't need to do anything.
That's good. Okay.
You don't need to do anything. The city's not paying for it, they're paying for it, so let them.
Okay, we were.
All right.
I propose no action. All right, thank you.
We are going to move on to new business. And we are going to skip item 1 because we want to listen to the public hearing at 6. So we're going to move on to item number 2, presentation, discussion, and possible action on allocating TWDB funds and the coronavirus local recovery fund. Ms. Kinsler.
Thank you, Mayor Council. If you go to the next slide, Zach, thank you. There we go. I type it small now. I'll go over here. So on August 2nd, the city of Blanco received notice that we had applied for and successfully obtained a $250,000 grant from the coronavirus relief funds. And then in December, I don't know the date yet, but we sent them the invoice this morning. The city of Blanco will be receiving $356,800 that I had found by looking at your TWDB loans and noticing that you hadn't drawn down on all of them. And so a lot that you had not drawn down on, TWDB just had not recorded, but in fact, there was some that you hadn't drawn down on. So I requested that they, because the bond is for the full amount. So I requested they reimburse the city the $356,000 or pay them that the city has already paid to the contractor for the work at the wastewater treatment plant. And so we should be getting that check any day. It's going to happen in December. So you go to the next slide. You have TWDB funds in the amount of 356 CLRF, which is Coronavirus Local Fiscal Recovery Relief Fund, I think, 256. So you have available now or in December, $613,000. Next August, we have already secured your CLFRF funds, so you will get another check next August in the amount of $256,000. So keep that in your mind when we're talking about this, because if it's something that can wait till August, you know, we may want to talk about that. So ideas, lift station expenses, roads, additional storage tanks at the wastewater treatment plant, the 281 corridor overlay, which I told you earlier was $41,995, I think. Some of your infrastructure issues. You can send purple pipe to irrigate more city land in anticipation of our permit being issued. Water, CIP, and a land use plan. That's necessary for you to move on to the next step with your impact fees. You could do a rate study. So whatever your ideas are, I just would like you to give us some direction so that we can proceed accordingly, because many of these pending ideas are pretty important. And if I know what direction you want us to head in, then we'll start running that race after this meeting.
I have a couple of questions. Are the TWDB funds in any way restricted because they were originally part of the wastewater loan? The fact that we didn't pay for that out of there, but now they're giving them to us, do we need to apply those to something that involves wastewater? Or does the Water Development Board not care what we do with them?
So that's a really good question. And what I have here on the background is that these were invoices. It's hard to wrap my head around the way the wastewater treatment plant was funded, because typically what would happen is you would get the bond, the enterprise fund would pay for the expenses, and then the bond, you just collect reimbursements. That is not what happened. There was bills paid for out of the general fund and the enterprise fund. It's very hard to figure out in some areas what's for wastewater and what's for water treatment. So the answer is, I have a feeling that for sure, if it was only paid out of enterprise fund, and it was for that, would just be wastewater treatment plant. But some of that stuff was paid out of your general fund. And so I would think that any of if you go to the next slide, sorry. I would think that any of the ideas there, with the exception of possibly the 281 corridor, I think you could justify doing any of that stuff.
Roads as well, but that.
Roads you can do with CLFRF funds.
The TWDB, the debate is whether we got to stick with water.
Correct. Right.
On the allocation, besides if it came out of the enterprise fund, no, if it came out of the general fund.
Correct.
Okay, and we don't know what the variance is at this point.
No.
Have we paid for the clarifier? Did we find money for the clarifier?
That was the money I was looking for the clarifier. I thought I had it all, but I didn't. I only had 356 from TWDB. That's what got me snooping around those bonds,
Right.
to see if I could find anything. That's what I found.
Because that's not up there, and that's like an immediate expense, is it not?
Sure is. Yes, ma'am.
But it has to be wastewater.
You would be fine paying for the clarifier out of either one of those.
Okay, so we could use TWDB for clarifier.
TWDB would be, yeah, they would not be that restrictive. If we were using it on the clarifier, they would be fine. We've already have that in writing from them.
What was the amount on the clarifier?
425. Do you remember, Zach? I know Ronnie knew it. Okay, somewhere between 420 and 450. I have 425 in my head. Close. It's close.
We're close.
I'm sorry, I couldn't find any more. That's what I found.
Okay.
Well, I think that's a reasonable allocation.
Okay.
I mean, we need all these things right now, but that's not a big enough number.
So
Right.
that's right. I will tell
Yes.
you, based on just my experience being here, additional storage tanks, they're not even close. They're so far, they're a lot of money. So I'm thinking to do something different for that. The 281 corridor overlay, that's a minimal expense. We have that down almost $100,000, and that's a minimal expense to protect your city. You have, or I believe you're going to approve a zoning map this evening that will be the beginning of the protection of your city. But the other layer of protection for the city is designing the 281 corridor overlay and implementing that so that everybody understands that's coming to develop in Blanco what the development restrictions are in Blanco. And so to me, that's a really important one. Irrigate more city land. I don't know how much it costs to lay purple pipe to the other city field. No idea. But I do know to lay purple pipe for about 27 acres was about $100,000.
How much road work can we actually get done for $100,000 or $150,000? I mean, I have no idea if we're going to go out and at least fix some of the horrible potholes and the really bad stretches of area. I know we're sort of holding off on some of our bigger road projects until we finalize the identification of the location of all of our sewer and water lines, so that we're sure we're not gonna go in and pave something that needs to be replaced. So we're looking at that, but certainly we could do a whole lot of patch and repair and sectional work, but I have no idea what that costs.
We
How much
spent
do we do?
$50,000 in the 2021 budget, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't believe that money got completely
It didn't
spent.
get used.
Well, what we
No, it didn't.
repaved up by the school.
Oh,
Okay, I'm
what did
going
that
back
cost?
A year back.
2021.
Okay, 2019.
Okay, a year further back.
Okay.
That's right. Last year was nothing. The year, that was a $50,000 road.
Okay.
So to answer your question, it'd be 3 times that.
That was a whole paving thing though,
Yes.
right? Whole paving. So I'm looking at, I know it isn't wonderful, but just fixing sections that are really, we can't hardly drive on until we know we're clear to do some real paving. I know
So
it's
I
a
can
stop.
tell you,
The CLF.
Yes,
right, I can tell you that you have a, I don't know what you call it, Zach, correct me if I'm wrong, a pothole patcher thing. And the reason that Public Works is not using it, according to the director, is because they don't have a dump truck to accompany it. So my suggestion was, it's been sitting there for 3 years? Sorry, 6 years, it needs to be used. And so I said, buy a used dump truck or rent a dump truck and just make that, do that for however many days you need. Don't just let it sit there. So that's something that you could authorize, is that they're either a used dump truck or rental of a dump truck, so they could actually use that piece of equipment and they could get potholes filled. So that's an idea.
There's some money already allocated in the budget for that.
I think it was $20,000 this year. Do you think? It's minimal, $20,000 or $30,000. It's patching. That's what it's for. That's right.
yes.
Yeah, so what you would do, we had talked about doing, thank you, we had talked about an interlocal agreement between the city of Blanco and either Johnson City or Blanco County to use their dump truck.
Yes.
Just like you have an interlocal agreement before you tonight, it'd just be similar to that, but it would be about roads and a dump truck. So yeah, good point. Thank you, Councilor Devine.
I feel that roads are one of the, after water, roads are the #1 concern for citizens. So I think that we definitely need to make some kind of action regarding roads.
Yeah.
So the only other thing would be the clay pipes and those old clay pipes, at least make a plan to get rid of some
Right.
of those.
So Mayor, Councilor Salceda, I agree with you, but until we actually have an inventory done where all the pipes are, I think that might serve you better. So it could be, I just don't know how many there are or where they are.
Right. And I think that's one of the things that
Or which
that's
ones are the
holding
worst
us up a little bit, is it's almost there, but the GIS download for all of the inventory, so we know where they are, the bad ones. And then there's also a less expensive way to fix them. I mean, we're not going to dig them up and take them out. There's other ways to line them, to go in and do whatever that'll be faster and easier and less expensive. But we have the committee, Mike Reekin and his group are working as fast as they can to give us a full prioritized listing and associated costs with what needs to be done ASAP and for those lines. But that's why I'm thinking more, rather than trying to pave something, unless he can identify an area where we know the utility, where we know the lines are in the easement and not under the road, and that happens to be a section that's really horrible and there's nothing under there, then we could look at some paving. But I would like to consider we use the 42,000 for the 281 overlay, and then look at whether we want to go 100,000 for road repair initially, at least 100K or 150K to see how much road work we can get done. It may not be fancy schmancy paving just yet until we see, but we've got some sections that could sure with some TLC at least give us some time to drive over them and not be so dreadful.
I've got a question. Are we required to allocate all of these funds now?
Mayor, Councilmember Smith, no, but you are required to allocate them this year before you ask for the new funds. So if there's anything you want me to do now, we can do. If you want to wait for later, really what I'm looking for is there anything that you want me to do before I leave? And what guidance do you want me to give your next city administrator moving forward?
Is there any other source of funds on the overlay expense?
Oh,
I mean, do we have another avenue on that?
there are grants. We don't have any pending grants right now for them.
And
I could see, I mean, the American Planning Association from time to time has funds available. I just don't know what their cycle is when they're due, whether or not we would be, considered a candidate based on the amount of traffic we have. I just don't know.
If we allocated the funds for that, engaged a contract for that work, and then applied for a grant, and were, optimistically successful on that, then we could reallocate those funds.
So Mayor, Councilmember Smith, that's called supplanting. So we have to be very careful with that. That's not allowed in any grant. So what you have to do is we write it, you kind of want to do it the other way. You write a grant for it. If the grant doesn't come in, then you pay for it. You can't pay for it and have the grant reimburse you. Unless it's a reimbursement grant, and there's very few of those.
Right.
And we may be able to find some through the COG.
If you have not expended the funds, but they're allocated, we have not spent them, right?
But if they are allocated in your budget, that's still considered supplanting.
Okay.
Yes.
That answers that question.
And
Did we not get a satellite survey or water and sewer infrastructure a few years back?
we did, and we just found it. Mr. Regan just found it, but it hasn't been uploaded into GIS so that we can read it. And then they just got something that was done, an inventory done on our water. So now he's going to get that uploaded into a GIS file. So we'll be able to see sewer, water, and then he's going to grade the roads. So we'll know exactly the condition of our roads. So when we do really hardcore paving projects, it's like this road's going to go, that road's going to go, but we'll also know whether that road has lines under it or whether they're in the easement. So I really think we're only a few weeks away from that. What I would say is that while we don't have to spend all of it right now, we could spend some to do some of the really horrible potholes like Pecan Street, and everybody's got their favorite pothole. We can work on getting some of those done with some of this, but also we are in line for loans and grants. And if they are matching, we may find that we need to have some money allocated to get a matching grant. So if we may find out about that as early as March. So if we had to have $100,000 to match so that we could get 200,000 or $1 million, I mean, some of it's like 5% matching, it would be nice to have some to know if our PIFs are going to get approved through the infrastructure allocations.
And my thought is on certainly the additional storage tanks at the wastewater treatment plant, the lift station, obviously, we've already submitted a grant for that. So I'm hoping that some of those expenses, wastewater side, lift station, that they're going to be part of one of the 2 federal grants that we've applied for. So I think it would be wise to hold off on those for a little bit and see what happens with those grants. I just talked to Zach to see if there was anything I was leaving out on the roads. He just wants to make sure you understand that that machine is primarily for fixing the sides of the roads, but it can also fix potholes. But it's not designed to like do a whole street. So just make sure that we were clear on that.
Kelly, is any of that grant money that potentially is coming our way available for the clarify?
I don't know.
I don't think we put a PIF in for the clarifier.
I do not remember one either.
We have no PIFs in for drinking water. And we've got Mr. Regan working on that right now. What do we want to ask for? There are 2 troughs. One trough is wastewater stormwater. And the other one is clean water, drinking water. So we have a lot of PIFs in line for our wastewater because we're looking for lift station, storage, all of those things. But we didn't submit anything on drinking water. It's not too late, but if we want to do that, we need to make that decision and have Bill Moriarty get that PIF in line ASAP. And we could put the clarifier in there.
Well, that's just kind of
Glaring in your face.
Right.
Well,
It's
So
all about
let me talk
timing.
to you about this supplanting. It is about timing.
Yes.
I don't know the parameters of the latest relief fund package. Maybe it can, because some of these, in particular, the freeze grants and that kind of stuff, you could take expenses incurred in the past. And so I don't know what the grant parameters are going to be of that, and whether or not you could reimburse yourself for that. What I do know is that you need a clarifier if you're going to have that thing working by July of this year.
Yes.
I'd like to open a dialogue of using the entire TWDB fund, $356,812.49, and fund the major portion of the clarifier. I mean, we've already spent this money, and there will be a bill coming for it in the next 60 days.
Yes.
So I think that, and that was we had no choice but to approve it. I mean, or we had a non-operational plan.
I agree.
But if we have a way to get us, I mean, only other thing we can do is go back to our reserves to fund it. And versus you can't transfer that money into the reserves. So
We were looking for money for the clarifier,
And
we have some money.
here it is. That's right.
I would also suggest that out of the CEL FRF funds that we'd spend $100,000 on the road, because I mean, every one of us hears that on a excessively frequent
Yes.
basis. And then I think the overlay, we don't have time to wait. I think so that would allocate all but about
110 or so. Yeah.
$14,000
And we
of
can,
that fund, and then we can address that next month or as we go forward and see.
then we can have it for matching. I will say tomorrow I will be on a 2-hour webinar with the feds and all of the money people with the water folks on how they expect the funds to travel down. And I will say that thanks to Bill Moriarty, who's worked with us and knows all things water money, he had a conversation on our behalf with the Water Development Board, and they did say they don't know yet when the money's coming. They could make us resubmit everything in March. That's what we hope we'll find out more about tomorrow on the webinar. But what TBWD did say is that if we get into a crisis situation on some of the things that are in our PIFs, and we feel like we have to move ahead, as long as we follow all of the procurement rules that TWDB has, as if they were loaning on a project, we could be eligible to be reimbursed after the fact if we had to begin something. So if, for example, we have to begin the lift station and figure it out and we can't wait to find out if we get the money, we need to carefully follow all procurement steps. And maybe we can then get reimbursed if it gets approved, should we not be able to wait long enough to find out.
I'd like to think at this point we are.
We're all fairly in agreement that the things that need to be funded are the clarifier, some money for potholes, and the overlay. Is that-
Yeah, I think so.
Are you ready for the motion?
Yes, I'm ready for a motion.
Okay.
Let's go.
All right. Madam Mayor, I make a motion that we allocate out of the TWDB funds the entire amount of $356,812.49 to offset a portion of the $420,000 cost of our clarifier that we've already purchased. I also, in this motion, ask that we allocate $100,000 of the CLFRF funds to road improvements or repair. And that we lastly allocate up to $42,000 for an overlay. And I have a couple of questions on the overlay. Kelly, is you did an RFP or you did an RFP.
That's going to be
Our
later.
RFQ, actually.
All right.
I'm sorry, RFP, you're right.
Contingent on us awarding that, because we've not awarded it yet.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay.
So Councilmember Smith has moved to allocate all of the TWDB funds to the clarifier and $100,000 of the CLFRF to roads repairs and $42,000 to the overlay if we move forward with that.
Contingent on the,
May I ask for a point of clarification?
yes.
For the clarifier, would part of your motion be to fund the remainder of the clarifier with the CLFRF funds?
Not at this time, no.
Not at this time. So you want us to pay for the clarifier with the TWDB funds and
And what, reserves?
reserves? Yeah. I can't just pay like 3/4 of a
Well,
clarifier.
they're gonna hold 10% retainage. So that's gonna buy us a little bit of time.
Mhm.
It won't cover all of it.
Sorry.
No, we didn't know it was going to happen.
Yeah, we did.
No,
Yeah, we
Was
did.
it when we were budgeting, we already knew? Did we?
I don't remember the amount you budgeted, and I'm sorry, the finance director's not here.
Ms. Kinsler, I am receptive reopening this, and we can, before that invoice is due.
Perfect.
Review this, and we'll consider it at that time.
That sounds good.
Yeah,
So in the
let's just
meantime,
leave this.
we will get to work. We'll set that aside for the clarifier. We'll get to work if the council so sees fit, 100,000 on roads and then the 281 overlay.
All right.
is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Devine has seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? The motion carries unanimously. So we are going to move to the public hearing at 6:04. I call the public hearing on the adoption of the proposed 2021 citywide zoning map amendment. We have
Did anyone sign up to speak at the public hearing? No. Why you just start? It's right there. I signed you up for the main meeting.
Here goes my party.
You can cry if you want to.
I do. I'm ticked.
Well, what else do we have coming up?
Oh, we've got executive session, and I'll get stuff, the city administrator job. Yep, all that. Richard and Campbell are signing up to talk on something we already voted on, so they can take their time. I told them to go tell everybody what they wanted. Since they weren't here, I told everybody what. So,
Well, I think I'm pleased with what we did here.
yes, I am too. I am too.
And
I think that's gonna,
another thing for you. A parks district. Are you familiar with it? You know, where I came from, Longview, it's just designated our whole town. It is a whole new array of. We're gonna have a 50,000 square foot museum. You know, multi-story, normal building. I mean, it is really long.
so, you know, I'm putting together development committees. I came up with planning and zoning last night. People that want to plan that. I met with the governors. We're going to apply to be a film city and music friendly city, and with the commission on the arts.
Maybe with the Benson family, we could, you know, designate some of their.
Haven't dealt with it.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh, she won't even open, she won't even let us park cars in her parking lot.
Never mind. Well, no, I'll tell you what. I will, some sort of a loan.
But you we had.
I came late and missed it.
I don't.
Three in the box.
They were supposed to pay.
Yeah.
I think there's land that I might do something with the city. Well, you know where it is? It's,
Okay,
in between
so
Live Oak and the river.
the first public comments that we have for the public hearing is Ms. Heidi Savory.
Evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here, I own Memories Antiques. I actually rent the building over there, but I've been working for the owner since about 2012. So being in the store 5 days a week, all the time, I've noticed the sidewalks, there are very big problematic situations. I've seen 80-year-olds, you know, fall down, smash their faces, and the gaps is about this high that they're hitting. I did do some of the work on myself by putting up cones, but the cones get stolen. And I put yellow tape down so people can see the caution so they don't get hurt, but it's continuously dropping. So I did address it with someone
Could you
many years ago.
Make sure your mic is on. I don't think your mic is on
Is there a button?
Yeah. But
for our remote people.
okay, so, I did walk it with somebody about 3 weeks ago, and they did say that there's some serious issues in the sidewalk, but I just want to inform you, it is getting worse. I came to the, and put in work orders or talked to somebody when we used to have, what did y'all call him? He went around code enforcement. He walked it, but now we don't have that either. The other issue is the creek bed, the creek behind it. The creek is washing out, and there really isn't a retaining wall. You can see where the retaining wall used to be, but there's basically hackberry trees keeping that ground up. What's happening is that building was built in 1947. It's got serious thick concrete floors, 2 floors. What's happening is the back end is dropping. And you can see what's happening on this side of the store because it's cracking over here. Because that concrete's all one area. When this starts dropping, something's going to happen over here. So I see new cracks happening, you know, monthly, quarterly, and yearly. I've gone through and tried to seal up some of the cracks in the building myself. And of course, there's going to be some major foundation repairs that are going to need to be done. I've done roof repairs. Anytime we have a seasonal rain that's 2, 3, 4 months long, like in the springtime, I have to go back up and redo my roofs again because the building is shifting. So I was just, if something could be done, it's putting retention wall back in there where the hackberry trees aren't holding up anywhere about 6 feet of dirt. It's something that really needs to be looked at. So that whole area that's running down, the sidewalk running down, going around the street and going into the ravine is causing due damage to a building that was built in 1947 by Benzos himself. So they were kind of the founders of this whole area. They had the bowling alley, they had poor boys. So if anybody would like to walk with me, I would love to show you the issues that we're having over there.
Thank you. So I wanted to clarify real quick that this is for the citywide zoning map, not for streetscape. So if anybody has any comments regarding the zoning map, it looks like everybody has signed up for streetscape, which we've already done our public comments earlier in the meeting. So
we were under the understanding that y'all were still in executive meeting. We got here at 5:45.
we have not entered into executive session.
Oh, okay. So I was told that the meeting started at 6.
So the meeting started at 5 and the public hearing was already posted for 6. So that's why we have stopped and gone back to the public hearing. So this, I'm not aware of who you, I apologize, but we did start at 5 and so we can't go back to the public comments. We've already closed that part. Is there anybody here for the public hearing regarding the zoning map?
Is there a time where we can come back and speak?
We have public comments at every meeting, at the beginning of the meeting. The meetings usually are at 6, but today is a special meeting, so we started at 5. But typically they are at 6, and you are welcome to come. And you are also welcome to email any of us or come by City Hall, come talk to me. I am there every day, and my door is open. So at 6:13, we are closing the public hearing and going to adjourn back into new business. Item 1, discussion, consideration, and possible action on adoption of the 2021 citywide zoning map amendment.
Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve the 2021 citywide zoning map amendment as tendered and approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Councilmember Smith has moved to adopt the proposed 2021 citywide zoning map amendment that was proposed by the P&Z Commission. Is there a second?
It's a second. It's passing, right? I second it. Second the motion that we adopted.
Councilmember Barron has seconded. Is there discussion? Would y'all like to have the PowerPoint before we move on?
Would it be in the best interest of those who were present?
There was no public comments, so I would say just move on.
So everybody, no further discussion?
Nope.
All in favor? The motion carries unanimously. Moving on.
I will make one comment. I mean, this is post-smoking, but I want to thank the Planning and Zoning Committee for all your work.
Yes.
Yes.
And everybody. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to item 3, Discussion, consideration, and possible action on contract negotiations with Intermark regarding operation, maintenance, and management of water and wastewater facilities. Ms. Kinsler.
Thank you, Mayor Council. Do go to the next slide, please.
How's that? There we go. Here I go. So the city of Blanco, as we discussed earlier, published an RFQ for the operations of the water and wastewater treatment plants. 5 potential companies attended the pre-bid meeting right here in this room, held by the city of Blanco. And there was actually only 2 companies that submitted after the tour and the pre-bid meeting. Both companies' proposals were reviewed and both were interviewed by a panel, which included Mr. Mike Rican, Councilor Smith, Mr. O.J. Armstrong, Councilor Barron, myself, Zach Doris, and Ben. I will tell you that Zach Doris and Ben were part of the review of the RFQs, but were not in the actual interviews. As you know, we had a crisis at Public Works, and so they were out. So that's just a timeline to show you when we issued the RFQ, when the pre-submission conference was, when the contractors had to have the RFQs to us, which was November the 23rd. The committee hit the streets like quick after that. November 29th, we were reviewing the RFQs for completeness and qualifications along with 2 of the Public Works staff. And both were recommended to move forward into the interviews, which were held 2 days later on December the 1st. And then the evaluations of the submittals were complete on December the 2nd. And tonight we're at December the 7th, which is to ask this body to either approve or disapprove, allowing me to begin contract negotiations with the chosen qualified company. And that company is, there you are, they're here. And their name just slipped me. I was just told you it was Atlas. Inframark. I was still on Atlas where we were. And it's Inframark, my goodness. So Inframark is here tonight. I would love to have them come up and introduce themselves and let you all ask them any questions that you might have.
I remember my name. I'm Ed Schwab, and I'm with Inframark. And I brought with me Ryan Quigley, our regional director, and Christy Hester, also a regional director here in the Austin area. I'm more than happy to answer any questions you may have. Anything I can answer, I'll let them step up and share.
I do have one question, sir, and that would be with your employees that are on site on a regular basis and everything that represent your company, embedding them, what type background checks or anything like that is done?
We do a background check and a drug test. And then we obviously have an interview process where we evaluate them personally and professionally on their skills and capabilities. And as we shared with the committee, our preference and our practice is to meet with your employees and give them a fair chance at this and work closely with your city staff to make sure that we have a very smooth transition and that everything's taken care of. The other thing we believe firmly in is that when deciding on healthcare choices, that's a family decision. So we invite the spouse and the employee to a meeting. We'll usually rent a restaurant or a room somewhere and cater it and have them here with our human resource director to go through those healthcare choices as a family so that we make sure they're taken care of and all their questions are answered.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Did our city staff here have input on this? Were they involved in any of the deliberations?
Kelly, do you want to answer that?
Mayor, Council, so I mentioned a few slides back that we had Zach, Doris, and Ben in the room when we were reviewing the RFQs.
So they're aware.
They're aware of both companies and they're aware of the RFQs, yes.
Is there a motion?
I guess I have one more clarification before we go forward, and this will be back to our city administrator, is when contingent on us approving this will come back to council again. Is that correct?
Mayor, Councilmember Smith, that is definitely correct. All you're approving right now is for me to go forward with the negotiations with Infomark. And quite frankly, that's something that I'm not comfortable doing by myself. And so I'm going to ask a Public Works employee to be there with me. And I'm also going to ask a couple of members of the Capital Advisory Committee to be there with me.
Thank you.
I move that we authorize our city administrator to enter into negotiations with Infomark for the operations of our water and wastewater treatment systems.
And I'll second. So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Councilmember Barron has moved for the city admin to start negotiations with Infomark regarding operation, maintenance, and management of the water and wastewater facilities. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Councilmember Smith has seconded. Any further discussion?
I just have a question. So I think you did ask it, that we're not committing to this once you come back. If it doesn't work for us, or if we start to do something with streets, I mean, have somebody, streets and parks and things like that. So,
Yeah.
so, and then, you know, we want some input, you know, I'd personally like to get more input from staff and, you know, how all that transition is going to happen. So,
Mayor, council members, I'll say that I would like to get more input from staff for the transition. That's not anything that I should be negotiating. They're the ones who are out there every day. So, and staff's already been invited to tomorrow. We're meeting with Infomark at 2. We have a tentative meeting already scheduled with them to get things started if you approve this tonight.
All in favor? The motion carries unanimously. We're going to move on to item 4, discussion, consideration, and possible action on a contract for legal counsel between the City of Blanco and Tim Tugby. Ms. Kinsler.
Mayor, council, thank you. Oh, there it is. Okay. Okay, so earlier I went through the timeline of all the RFQs and RFPs that we've been working on. So I don't need to reread them. We've already had this in the PowerPoint, but that's basically the duties of your city attorney, in addition to prosecution, which we already have somebody contracted for prosecution services. Next slide. So we submitted an RFQ on November 3rd. It was in the newspaper. We had it submitted to TML for their website. The Texas City Attorneys Association posted it for us, and that started November the 3rd as well. The RFQs was a quick turnaround. They were due November the 15th. 3 RFQs were submitted, and the interviews were conducted on November 18th and 19th by myself, Councilmember Smith, Councilmember Barron. November 30th, you all, which was last week, you all approved contract negotiations with Tim Tugby. And the next day or the day after, I began those negotiations. And the terms, this guy was really easy to negotiate with. So yes, I hope it stays like this for everybody. So a few items that I think are noteworthy from the conversation and the negotiations between me and Mr. Tugby is there's a 3% administrative fee that are going to be added, that's added to the monthly invoices. That's the same exact amount that you were paying Bullock and Hyde. Secretarial and word processing time is not charged, so that's great. Attorney travel time is not charged. The hourly rate of $200 is the exact same of the previous city attorney. A couple of other things I think that are important for you to know is Tim Tugby is general counsel for the Capital Area Metropolitan Planning Organization. He's been with them like 12 or 14 years. And so he has an interesting set of skills but one thing that's really helpful is how many people he knows, how many cities and county, officials that he knows. But he does not want to become a city attorney and service 10 towns. He wants to continue to service Campo, and then he wants to service Blanco. He's not interested in taking on any other city. He really likes Blanco. And I think that was felt by the committee that interviewed, and we heard loud and clear. I will tell you that today, I see no problems with this negotiation. And so I went ahead and set up a transition meeting between Mr. Tuggy and Brad Bullock today. I think we were there for like maybe 2.5 hours. It was a while. It was a long meeting. But Mr. Bullock was able to explain some of the pending litigation that the city of Blanco has, which we really have it down to almost one right now, one in a little bit. But he was able to explain that to Mr. Tuggy. And so I propose that we keep Brad Bullock, barreling forward with those two cases because of all the historical knowledge that he has. But he did share with Mr. Tuggy, and Mr. Tuggy wants to be in the loop. He doesn't want to just stand on the sidelines and let that. He wants to know what's going on with his city that he is representing. And I appreciated that very much. So that was pretty much the transition. Mr. Tuggy will be doing everything else at the prices that I just showed you. Blanco paid, I looked at what that Bullock and Hyde charges, and they were charging everybody else more than $200 an hour. Blanco was the last one standing at $200 an hour. So I was grateful that Mr. Tuggy would just take the same rate and go running with it, and did us better, actually.
So you did say we would not be charged for travel expenses?
That's what I said.
But in this agreement, it says other charges, and it says out-of-pocket expenses such as copying charges, travel expenses, and all that. Incurred by me in connection with my representation of you will be billed to you as a separate item on your statement.
So I thought that was travel for extraordinary travel. Exactly. He's not charging to come to the meetings. We're not on the clock. We're just driving to Blanco.
That Las Vegas convention you
That's right.
mentioned, right? Yeah, sure, that one.
Absolutely. I believe in the agreement it says that there's no, I'm pretty sure it does. I wouldn't have picked out that bullet. Absolutely. Yeah, there you go. We can make it part of the motion.
Is there a motion?
So I move that we enter into a contract with Tim Tuggy for legal services as outlined, where's the outline? $200 per hour, no charge for travel. What's the main agreement thing up there? So I'm clarifying it. Are we getting that?
Yeah, we found it. So
Did
it's
you
on
find it?
Exhibit A, page 5, where he says he will not charge for travel.
Oh, okay, so it's in there. All right. So then I can just, it's in there, so I don't need any amendment. So I enter.
I didn't figure it wouldn't be if I had it as a point.
So I move that we accept the contract with Tim Tuggy Law as outlined to us this evening.
I'll second.
Councilmember Barron has moved to approve the contract with Tim Tuggy, and Councilmember McKellen has seconded. Is there any further discussion? All in favor? The motion carries unanimously.
Congratulations and welcome.
Welcome.
Moving on to item 5, discussion, consideration, and possible action on a contract with Atlas Design Services for the US 281 corridor.
So you see why I couldn't get Atlas out of my brain. Sorry about that, Infomark. So we've already talked about this a little bit earlier when we talked about the 2 pots of money. But the project as it's designed right now is twofold, and it's to establish a vision which ensures for future development along 281 that maintains and enhances the character of the city. And then the second is an action plan that actually implements the vision. So the recommendation originally was going to be 135 by Simple City. We began to work with Atlas Designs. They received, I received, I think, a 45,915 proposal, and it's now been negotiated to 41,915. So we did not go with the original RFP because I felt like we could do better, and we did a lot better, almost $100,000 better. So it is my recommendation that you accept the contract with Atlas Design so that you have a responsible means to develop 281. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
Planning and zoning, is this something that P&Z discussed?
Mayor, Councilmember McClellan, no, this has not gone to planning and zoning.
I don't think there's really anything that planning and zoning would necessarily be doing on this, Keith. This is, this would be treated as an overlay district. And what it would be brought before us, I mean, there will be public comment and public input. So it is a process, but they'll be looking at our current UDC and development standards and design standards and zoning and look at recommendations for changing those if necessary, so that construction that begins or development plans that are proposed would be consistent with how things will look like they belong here. Things will look like they should.
Is there some mitigation? I don't know, how do you mitigate the traffic that's coming down?
Well, that's a whole nother subject.
That's in your consent agenda.
Yeah, that's.
We can put up pretty lights along the way, but we still have that.
Well, I think this has to do with, does our current UDC allow for a big box store? Does our current UDC standards allow for us to do convenience store with all glass in the front and vinyl that looks like every 7-Eleven? And I suspect currently it may, and if it does, we would want those standards to be changed so that if that's going to be built and it goes along with what makes sense for zoning, that it would be, it's tighter restrictions than might exist other places for aesthetic purposes, but also to make sure that it allows businesses that can add to our tax base, that it's fiscally responsible. Yeah. Yes.
Mayor, Councilmember McClellan, I think it's also important to note that Tommy McClung, who is, I think, owner of Atlas Designs, definitely will want, he's already mentioned it, he will want some planning and zoning involvement. So.
Right. It's a process, and it's almost a year-long process to get it done, but that's why it's important to start now.
This is there's no public comments at this time on it.
There will be plenty of input from lots of people through the process.
And I believe this is going to be a step to what we hear all the time, keep Blanco Blanco. And this, in my opinion, would be a good step to that.
Great. Ms. Coaster, I do have a question on the procurement process that we went through.
Mm-hmm.
And it's my understanding you only received one response to the RFP.
Mayor, Councilor Smith, that's correct.
So you had a second proposal come in at a later.
Yeah. So what happened, honestly, is kind of similar to what happened with your $100,000 flood insurance. I sat here and I was like, no way. We could do better. And we did like 97.5 better. So on this, I went, no, we can do better. And I can't remember how, I met with Tommy McClung and he said that they were looking for one last piece. They started this company and they were looking at one last piece of the puzzle, and they would like to submit an RFP for this. And I said, you can submit a proposal. The RFP deadline is over. And we don't have to go with, when you submit an RFQ or an RFP, you don't have to go with any of them.
I understand, but I know there's some public bid statutes, but I believe if it's under $50,000, you're not in that auspice. Is that correct?
Yes. So Mayor, Councilmember Smith, I could have signed this and gone off on my own. That's just not advisable to any city administrator, in my opinion. Light needs to shine. It needs to be shared with you, and you all need to make the decision. You're the policy board.
all the.
But I could have made the decision.
Right. And as long as we've met all the requirements to comply with the public bid statutes, then I am receptive to make a motion if you're ready. Okay. I make a motion that we contract with Atlas Design Services for the US 281 corridor and let Ms. Kinster proceed with that.
Councilmember Smith has moved to have Ms. Kensler proceed with negotiating a contract with the Atlas Design Services for the US 281 corridor. Is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Barron has seconded. Discussion? All in favor? The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. I'll begin that work.
So at 6:36, we are going to adjourn into executive session. Item 1, discussion.
This conference will now be recorded.
Bonnie's out of the hospital at home, doing well.
Okay, at 7:48, we are back into regular session from executive session. And item 1, is there a motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor. I want to authorize our city administrator to begin and complete negotiations with our selected candidate, Warren Escovitch, as city administrator.
Councilmember Smith has moved to have our city admin negotiate a contract with our city administrator candidate that we have selected, which is, oh, okay.
I'm sorry, to be presented to council on December the 14th for action.
Okay, so Councilmember Smith has moved to approve the negotiation of contract between the city and Warren Escovitch, and that will be brought back before us on the December 14th meeting. Is there a second? Councilmember Devine has seconded. All in favor? The motion carries unanimously. With Councilmember Barron absent. Item 2, there was no action. And item 3, is there a motion?
Madam Mayor, I make a motion to authorize our city attorney to discuss with co-counsel and address our comments.
On the statewide agreement,
On the agreement.
would you state the name of the agreement?
This is the reclaimed water agreement between the city and Camacho Mayo Investments LLC.
Councilmember Smith has moved to have our city attorney review and discuss with the co-counsel regarding the possible reclaimed water contract. Is there a second? Councilmember McKellen has seconded. All in favor? The motion carries unanimously, again with Councilmember Barron absent. Item 4, is there a motion?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we thank Canyon Lake Water Systems for their letter dated December the 31st, 2021.
December 1st.
December the 1st, 2021, with the assistance of our staff and water consultants, we will submit a counter proposal.
Councilmember Smith has moved to thank the CLWCS for their letter and would like for staff and water experts to look at and renegotiate the contract. Is there a second? Councilmember Devine has seconded. All in favor? The motion carries unanimously. Is there a motion to adjourn? Councilmember Smith has moved to adjourn. Second. Councilmember Devine has seconded. So all in favor? The motion carries. So at 7:53, we are adjourned.